Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Outside the Panels. Now, when this gentleman's name crossed my desk, I was like, oh my God, could it be? Not the X-Files creator? No, oh my God, could it be? The Minnesota Vikings star wide receiver who ended up with the Dolphins? No. It's even better than that. I'm talking to Mr. Christopher Carter of Global Comix. Christopher, how's it going?
Johnny, thank you so much for having me on. It's going excellent.
Excellent, cool. So, famous names, man. Look at all the Chris Carters we have kicking around the world, right?
You know, small little thing. There was a moment in my life where I was working for a video game company called Blizzard. You may have heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
And before social media became superly adopted, the policy of the company, I was in the community department. They didn't want people to put their names associated with their Blizzard names.
Okay.
So I had in my signature on the World of Warcraft forums, 1013. Just slight, subtle reference to the X-File creators production company.
Did anybody twig it? Did anyone work it out?
I think I had to actually answer that when I left the company, and I had my farewell thread, and people were like, "Why does it say 1013 in your signature?" Well,
because the truth is out there. See you later.
That too, yeah.
Okay, so we're here to talk about Global Comix. Now, explain what Global Comix is to everyone who's looking and scratching their head thinking, what?
Global Comix is a digital comics publishing platform, reading platform, and community. And it connects creators with each other, readers with great stories, and readers with creators and publishers.
Cool.
And it functions pretty much like a mix of if you take Netflix and Twitter and mash them together. Creators and publishers have their own identities, and they publish out to feeds, and you as a consumer get to follow them and see what they're up to and engage with them, and populate your discovery experience with lots of amazing comics laid out just for you.
So when we talk about publishers, let's drop some names. Which publishers are on board with this?
Some well-known ones. Well, Top Cow, Humanoids, Heavy Metal, Source Point Press, AWA. I could keep going, but the list is at 100 now for publishers.
Wow.
So we'd be here for a while.
Cool. That's a fair shout. You've dropped some pretty heavy names there in the indie market. Humanoids by Mark Wade runs that. AWA, whole host of ex-Marvel guys on there. That's impressive portfolio, Chris.
Thank you.
How did you manage to snag so many key, I suppose, publishers? Because the indie market right now is it's going massive, isn't it?
I mean, it's budding, I'd say. It has so much potential, and we are right at the precipice for that to be realized if it's, if things are done in the right way. as far as I think, anyways. How did we get them? There's a thing that happens when you make a product for people where you before you set out and write a bunch of code and make a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of research on what are the actual pain points for people, right? Publishing in some cases would take creators and publishers 5-6 months to get a book out or book online, which to me in the digital space didn't make any sense at all. And discovery, how do you juxtapose a plethora of indie creators against bigger publishers and still have everyone be discoverable? And so it really just started with that, because it was a conversation, right? It's hey, here are the pains that we're solving. We like your stuff. We want to work with you. And in fact, we'll import your entire backlog for you. You don't really need to do anything.
Wow, yeah, we'll do the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah. Excellent. So, that was kind of like the start of conversations, and as you can see, it led to a yes. So now we're all in happy friendships together.
Excellent. Do you think then that obviously there's going to be a large proportion of this answer is going to be in the affirmative? Do you think that digital comics is where comics are going to end up?
I don't think that's the right question to ask you.
Oh, okay then. So what should be the right question?
I think that there are millions and millions and millions of people in the world that in one way or another in their life have discovered comics. Before the internet, that used to be things like the newspaper strips, right? Like take Peanuts and
Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, all those things. And now people are, seeing panels shared on Instagram or, strips on Reddit or in their Facebook feed, right? And memes as a thing, uses a lot of comic style material anyways. Mm-hmm. And so, like in its barest form, the individual panel is something that, hundreds of millions of people are exposed to on a daily basis.
That's a fair shout. Yeah.
So, like this idea of digital comics, it's a starting point, much more so than the end point, right? Like, so kind of the way that I view the world, from a digital first lens, is that you have folks that are kind of like comic curious, and then they get like interested, and they're like seeing some things online. Some amount of those folks will start reading a lot online. At some point, like from their entry point coming digital first, they're going to be like, have a relationship with some specific set of creators or publishers or books. And they might be, like, I want to become a super fan. I want to read this thing. I want to have it as a physical book. I might become a collector, this type of progression path. And I see digital's strongest benefit for the comics market is getting way more eyeballs into the audience and getting, building up a much larger audience for everyone involved without that even competing with, like the more traditional formats. I like I said, I think it's a natural progression path for the folks that become emotionally involved in a story or a creator or a publisher. Who want to become a collector.
I think it's easier nowadays. So you're absolutely right. You see a panel, you see a piece of art, you see it on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you see it. Next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole doing your Google searches, finding where's this, what do, and like, oh my God, you can buy a comic book full of this stuff. And then because it's all on one of these things, people don't even have to leave the comfort of their couch. Yeah.
Right. It's at your fingertips, no matter where you are.
One of the days where you think, I have to travel, 50 miles to the local comic book shop for some places. And it's kind of, I don't know. I can see the attraction of it. I absolutely totally can. And when I review for Crusaders, Comic Crusaders, our sister site, I get digital comics because they're not going to ship them all the way over here to the UK for me. I mean, they should.
I mean,
DC,
right?
But so I see the benefit. But man, I'm an old timer collector, man. I like to hold the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what can I say? It's like listening to music.
But there's nothing wrong in that either, right? Like,
I'd rather put the CD in.
I've never understood why there was so much conversation back and forth about like, should it be this or should it be that? Why can't it just be both, right? Like that's always been my perspective.
I appreciate your perspective. I kind of agree with you. To be fair, I think that's the benefit. That's one of the beauties of comic books is you've got different formats for different things. If you like floppies, you can go out to the comic book shop. If you go want to spend the money on floppies, you want to buy trades, you can go to the your Waterstones or your Barnes and Noble. If you want digital, you can just get it off your phone. They're there. It shouldn't be this or that.
Right.
Comics are so immersible. Then because of their flexibility, they can be taken any shape of way form that you want them to be.
And that's why going back to, I think we're at the precipice, because if we can do this right and we can get, so many millions of new people into this community of ours, and we can embrace them and that, man, a wonderful world for comic creators to grow into these days.
Perfect. Right. So you sound like you're a bit of a comic fan yourself. What were you reading when you were knee high to a comic book stack?
Let's see. So I'm from Norway originally.
Okay.
And that kind of, the reason I always lead with that is because it limits the actual stories and like franchises and brands and whatever that were available to me. But I grew up with the weekly Donald Duck magazine and the supermarket news shelf area, right? That was kind of my starting point. I always was like the Don Rosa stories for Donald, chef's kiss, right? Like that, they were so good. I was super fascinated by that. At some point, I grew up a little bit older. I wanted some more advanced stories. And the next place that took me was Asterix.
All right, okay, yes, I can see that. Very European Asterix, isn't he?
Very, yeah.
He's for a lot of non-Europeans, Asterix is an acquired taste.
Asterix is the best way I can describe how the French were able to make fun of themselves during the Roman era.
Oh man,
it's brilliant. But at some point I became a teenager, as you do, and I got introduced to Spawn, and that was kind of my first American side of comics industry introduction. Spawn was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And I kind of read like random stuff here and there as I was picking it up, right? Like I read some Phantom, I read some Sprint, I read some Spiralis, I read a little bit of Marvel, but I didn't really like double down into any of those. And then, in my mid-20s, early 20s, the internet started to become a thing, and I discovered Japanese comics, manga.
Of course. Yeah.
And I followed a couple of series from start to finish. But I wouldn't call myself, like a diehard manga person either. Like I just actually really like a lot of different kinds of stories for many different reasons. And I'm not the type of comic fan that you look at and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's a superhero guy, or that's a European only guy, or anything like that. I appreciate comics so much because they tell such great stories with an implicit culture embedded that you can learn so much about the world and the people around you just from reading the stories from the creators.
Cool. Do you feel that your open-mindedness towards different publishers and the different storytelling, whether it be superheroes, whether it be Vertigo, whether it be European or manga, do you feel that that's stood you in good stead when you're launching Global, and the fact that you are looking to incorporate so many other publishers, you're not just focusing on certain brands?
I think it's part of our driving mission, right? Because so I moved from Norway to Germany, and from Germany to San Francisco, and then back to Norway and to France. And I was living in Paris for a while too, and now I'm in New York. And like through this journey of traveling,
That's a trip.
I mean, I'm that kind of worldly citizen, I guess.
Excellent.
As part of traveling, from place to place, I always ended up with the situation where, well, now I can't get access to these things that I was reading, like 2 weeks ago even. And for me, that was a problem. So very selfishly, I'm like, okay, well, I'm at least going to solve that if I'm going to make a comic platform. But it just so happens that, there are millions and millions of other people that don't have access to some of these stories because they don't live close to a comic book shop, or because it's not localized in their country, or, these types of things.
It's when you mention that, I remember a few years back. I say a few years back. It was before Spawn, so that's how long ago this was. I was a comic book buying person myself, a fan, just as I am now, and my local comic book shop closed. And I was like devastated. I was like, no, what am I going to do with my comics? What am I going to do? So I opened a comic book shop. I was like, right, I'll do it myself. Fine, I'll just open the shop. Let's do that. So I ended up opening like I don't know if you outdoor markets, you know, the market stalls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had one of those on 3 different towns in the northeast of the UK. And I'd have people come by and they'd be like, "Have my regular order?" And like, "Yeah, there you go. Get what back issues would you like?" and stuff. I wouldn't say I made a fortune, but hey, kept my comic collection going.
I mean that, and you got to do something and work with something you really seem to enjoy and like, right?
Yeah, definitely. The trick was though, I bought an X-Men collection of someone, and I needed, and my brother had flicked through it, and he had a customer that wanted Uncanny X-Men 281. And I needed X-Men 281. What do you do, man? Do I keep it? Do I sell it? What do I do?
What did you do?
I kept the damn thing. It's my collection. Oh, eh?
I was kind of expecting that.
Good. Rogue in the Savage Land. Who wouldn't want that? Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep your change.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah. Finders keepers, right? Finders keepers.
Well, you know, the benefits of running the business.
Yeah. So you started off on Spawn. You've taken on board different comic book audiences with manga and all the different stuff. What are you reading right now? What sort of books are floating your boat?
I mean, right now I'm all over the place because Global Comix, like literally, I try to spend at least an hour a day just kind of like reading through what's coming in, because you know, I think it's important that if I find, you know, like things that I think are gems, and I can find those people on Twitter, or I can find, you know, somewhere else on social, be able to go out and say like, "Hey, I read your thing. Thank you. This is awesome." Right. Yeah. Like, and then whenever I go back to Norway, I'll actually pick up Donald Duck pockets, and that's my thing. So like, you know, I go back home there, and I got a venerable collection at this point of just things that I've left every time I visit home. I read some Korean manhwa.
Okay.
You know, there are some of these stories that are told from a very different cultural perspective that I find very fascinating, because kind of the approach that the author would take in the storytelling, or kind of how characters behave and stuff, is new to me, in that, you know, I haven't read that much of it. But I think if I had to put, you know, like one single series which I collect everything of and that I read, it's a very local Norwegian series called Pondus.
Okay.
And I have my family pick up all of the collected editions when they come out. And I read through that, and I have it very nicely stacked. You know, not top shelf collector grade stacked, but they're also not being damaged where they are. And that would be, you know, like some form of tribute to my comic childhood, I guess. You know, like started in Norway, I'm going to collect in Norway. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. The platform Global Comix, it's not just for existing publishers, right? People can put their own books on there.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because I'm crowdfunding and Kickstarter and Indiegogo, go. I don't put too many goes in there. That's fine. And all that sort of stuff. That's huge as well at the minute. Lots of people are getting on the Kickstarter trend, and actually not just indie creators. There's some really big name creators getting involved. Publishers, DC are putting out a card game akin to Magic the Gathering that's on Kickstarter. Dynamite are doing tons of Red Sonja Vampirella stuff on there. So, and I suppose the beauty of something like that is if people buy or pledge to the Kickstarter product, it means that they want that product. So a company doesn't have to just make something and hope it sells.
Yeah.
They're creating their own, I suppose, desire for that, aren't they? They're creating their own need. So how do creators get involved in like putting their own work on there? Are the guidelines they have to hit? Is the kind of
we have a set of content guidelines that go around, what is acceptable drawings and storytelling.
Okay, so no Zenoscope then, right? No. I'm joking. I love Zenoscope. I'm just joking.
The majority of comics that are not straight up erotica would be fine on Global Comix.
Okay.
We draw the line on pornographic for the sake of pornographic.
Yeah.
It's fine
if you like Swing and Sunstone would be on there.
Yeah, it's fine with nudity, and it's the point of the story shouldn't be the sex scene. The point of the story should be like something else, and there happens to be a nudity scene here or there, like whatever.
That's that's exactly how I explain Sunstone to people. People say, Sunstone, what's that about? And I'm like, it's about two people who fall in love. They don't know they're in love, but it's 300 pages of them working it out. And they say, oh, that's boring. I say, yeah, it also has lesbians and bondage. So, that's it, right?
It might not. I'll say this though. I might not be able to like bring that availability into an iOS app, but certainly on the website, there's no problem at all.
So you brought up iOS, so therefore there is a level of mobile access to this. So for anybody who doesn't speak European like us, it's cell phone access. Yeah. So you're able to get there's apps on. Is it available on iOS as well as Android, or?
We're deep in development now. We've been working on it since January of this year, and we expect to have the apps out around end of Q3.
Cool.
And we're taking, there's a couple of different reasons why we didn't just start with an app. One of the most important ones was, business strategy wise. Why would we make an app first before we had enough books for people to read?
That's a great shout. Yeah, definitely.
And so, around the start of this year, we got to what we considered critical mass, as in like there's enough breadth and depth for people to come in, across most genres, and they can find more than one story that they want to read. Right.
Cool.
And the second reason is also we're not just taking our website and saying, okay, how do we fit this into an app, or even just let's just make a comic reading app. We've really thought through the app experience as separate from everything else.
It's a good shout, because how we interact with our phones is totally different to how we interact with our computers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I do read comics on my phone. However, if you see, it's a Sony phone. It's got you can't get a panel on there, so you read sideways. So you get the whole page on, right, or like in segments. It takes practice and a lot of patience.
It does.
So having it on the website makes it easier and more accessible.
I think that it's more than just that. It's also the kinds of behaviors that you're used to with media on your phone today, whether it's picture sharing or it's video sharing, like Instagram, TikTok, Reels, or, like there's a lot of context there and what you expect from kind of like a social platform, right? So like discourse and reactions and like there's a community there that you can be part of and engage with. These are things that haven't really ever properly been brought into a digital comics experience, especially on an app side. Like most comics apps are some form of an iTunes clone where it's like choose your book, buy the thing, download, read it, and like that's your like behavioral loop. But our app is more, it's that, but it's not really, you don't buy, you get a subscription, you can read everything that's on Global Comix. So that like removes the barrier to entry for exploring, you know, anything and everything.
Yeah.
And then as you're reading, you get to be part of this community where, you know, you actually get to react to stuff and see how other people reacted to specific pages or panels as you're going through the story.
Cool. And that's important because it's immediate feedback for creators, isn't it?
Well, it's feedback for creators. It's like, you know, dopamine moments for the readers, right? Like you flip a page and 500 people react with like fire, and it's, you know, coming up on your screen, and you're like, okay, this is gonna be cool, right? Like as a reader, you're like, oh, this is a moment.
Oh, I should have been paying attention there. Right, okay, go back, check it again. Right, we'll take a quick break before we get into more Global Comix. Where shall we go? You know what? As Global Comix covers a whole width and breadth of different characters, I think it's time for this one. One of my favorites. It's time for a crisis, but only in the Toyverse. Check it out. There you go, Crisis in the Toyverse for all you figure fans, by Bobo, covering everything from Turtles to Bats to Superman, Spider-Man. I even saw John Wick in there. Pretty impressive. You never know. Right, okay. Should we have a quick look at the website then, Chris, and see what we're talking about?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Boom. There we go. Direct-to-consumer publishing and monetization tools. Excellent.
So we are looking at the sign-up page for creators and publishers.
Yes. Cool. So here you've got your Global Comix at a glance. There's a lot of information on there. Yes.
Oh, it's 12,500 now. So you reminded me I got to update this number.
Hey, I'm here to help, man. I'm here to help. Don't you worry.
There we go.
Looking across the top, you've got comics, creators, forums, news, talent. These are places you can dive to. Let's have a quick look. Comics. There we go. Oh well. So some of these. This amputation book that's just come out this week. Fantastic. Lots of different things on there. Decay. Yep. That's a Kickstarter. I've interviewed the gentleman who's involved in that. That's a really good fun book as well. So a whole load of different types of things going on there, and I love how you've got this kind of tick list. It's like an eBay tick list, isn't it? Like you feel your different filters going on there. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's like choose your own adventure, right? Like, and you can combine them too, right? Like, so here's you know the standard one. Folks come to me and they're like, okay, well, how do I see the stuff that's by the big folks, right? And so there's only one thing that you really need to do. If you scroll up there, you choose shared by, and you do publishers.
Shared by publishers. There you go.
And now you have books from publishers specifically.
Yeah.
And everything else is like self-filterable. If you wanted to find indie creators specifically, you set creators.
Yeah.
And another thing that's kind of cool here is you can choose to filter by just traditional layouts, page by page type
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
And vertical comics. So we support, the folks from Webtoons style comic creation, as well as the folks that are invested in traditional comics and manga and whatever.
Prior to speaking to you, Chris, I had an interview with Jason Starr about his new book, his novel, and we brought up Casual Fling. It's a great little book, that. Very good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so there you go.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it's really good, really clever. Not that I'm bragging, but I've interviewed the guys who created that. There you go. I am bragging just a little bit, I suppose.
Well, I mean, you get to talk with people that make, great minds and make really enjoyable things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a comic book fan. I couldn't do this if I didn't like comic books, right? Cool.
Oh, I could never. My artistic ability is non-existent.
Yeah. Everyone's seen my art several times. I said art. Don't beat me out. It was art. I said art. Right. You brought up an interesting word that's kind of made the news this week. Webtoons. There was I don't know if you saw it, but there was a tweet in a picture, and the image on the blurb was something along the lines of comics, literature's fun sidekicks or subculture or something. How did you feel when you saw that? Have you seen that?
Yes, I have. I think my thought went to, and rightfully so, to the creators that spend, like their entire waking day working on comics, and very often they do it without even being paid.
Yeah.
With the hopes of one day actually getting paid.
Yeah.
And then at the same juxtaposition, you have the folks that are doing it for a job. And that's kind of like where my mind went first. And I'm like, man, that can't feel, too good personally. But then beyond that, like, I forget who it was that said it on Twitter, but the summary is that, comics is a really legitimate and in its own right strong form of creativity and literature.
Agreed. 100%.
And like, that's the kind of message that I want the world to see and hear. And so I was thinking, like, how can we as Global Comix make these people feel appreciated and get an avenue for that kind of future that they're looking for? And so it really just kind of, it wasn't a new question that like came to us, because that's the question that we ask ourselves all the time. But like, it was a reminder that these are people that are deeply invested in what they do, and they put so much time and effort into it. And like, we as the people that are making distribution channels, platforms, publishing companies, whatever that is, need to remember that human element in the grand mix of everything.
I'm disappointed I was disappointed by the idea that a company or a platform that is producing comics thinks of nothing more than comics as a side hustle. I was really disappointed. I spend a lot of my time defending comic books in my day job. There's a young lady that works with me, and when I come back from the local comic book shop, she'll say, "How much have you spent on comics today?" And I say, "Oh, I don't go every week, admittedly." So it's like, "Oh, £30, £50, whatever." She goes, £50 on comic books. I'm like, "Yeah, but you smoke. You spend like what, a tenner a day more. So at least I've got something to read at the end of it, right?" And it's trying to, when people say comics, they automatically think of superheroes, and they don't think superheroes, they think of Batman, and they think the 60s Batman, and like, comics are so more evolved than that. They're so more evolved than superheroes. You know, they don't have to be all kapow and punch this and flying capes. Don't get me wrong, I love Batman, absolutely, and I'm probably always going to love Batman just the same way you love Donald Duck. But we both know there's more comics out there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't understand why a publisher would or a platform in which they're using people's hard-earned graft, hard-earned work, and just calling it a side hustle. But if I was a creator, I'd be dropping webtoons like nobody's business. That's what you think of me. See ya.
Yeah, like I can't really comment on whatever the process was that led to that for them. And I don't think it's right of me to as an outsider,
I apologize.
Speculate on it either.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry if I've put you in a bit of a spot.
Like I will say this. I don't think that any of that messaging was intended in a negative way. I think things happened that led to that outcome, but I certainly don't think, let's get a bunch of people in a room and say, how do we say something that will piss off half of our user base? That doesn't really make sense.
Half? You are being generous. All right, so back to Global Comix. Let's talk about something positive. You've got this comic creator talent marketplace. I think this is a great idea. So for whether you're looking for work or whether you're seeking people, you can talk what you're looking for, search the projects that match you, build that community with the RSVP. And then the idea, of course, is the book gets put on the marketplace and jobs are good. And I think that is such a clever way. It so totally streamlines the whole getting into comic books as an artist or a writer. You no more going to comic conventions, waiting in an artist alley. Can you have a look at my picture, please? Yeah, can you have this, please? What made you want to incorporate something like that?
It didn't exist. Right. Like I'd be asking creators, how do you find paid gigs? How do you make money? Like whether, as a side income, to supplement your main, or as your main thing. And like the answer that I would get was, well, sometimes I post on Twitter, or I'll post on Reddit, or I'll post on Facebook groups.
Deviant art. I see a lot of that kicking around.
And I'm like, wait, are you telling me that there isn't a resource that lets you filter and like find the things that are specifically resounding no, right? If you can scroll up and go to the one where it says I'm looking for people.
Yes. Yeah. Is that there?
Yep.
Yeah. So click it.
Yes, please.
There we go. Here we go. Wow. Oh, look at that.
So now it's just, here's a database, a resource that lets you filter by roles for whatever kind of creator or part of the creative process you are, filter by the types of rewards you're looking for, right? Like you can do work for free, or you can do it for a flat rate, or per page or whatever. And also the types of work that you're willing to produce, right?
Yeah.
And then sub filters by, like types of audience or theme or art or style or these types of things. And we let creators, post their listings. Hey, I'm looking for work. Here's my skill sets, blah, blah, blah. And we also let people, say, hey, I'm looking for people, right? Like if someone's working on a book and they need a replacement, colorist or something like that, they can go in here and they can say, here's what I'm produced before. Here's what I'm working on right now. I'm looking for colorists. I'll pay, X dollars per page, and so on and so forth. And if you click into any of these, choose the top one, comic artist seeking to start to do freelance. Take the very. So then we actually provide you with kind of like an inverse job listing page with your portfolio attached, and you get to list out your actual experiences and kind of like your work history. And if you're like detailed about it, you'd see a lot of text there, right? Like if this creator had done that.
Yeah. I know there's some stuff on there. I work digitally using Photoshop.
Yeah. But you know, so now that like commission button, like that handles the workflow. It puts you in contact with the listee, and it provides a streamlined interface for private communication between the two of you, so you don't even need to share your email or anything like that in the public. As the guy creating the listing, if they find someone that they want to work with through the interface, they get a free legal consultation for setting up a contract for their work. And it handles the workflow all the way through to, okay, I'm going to accept this applicant, and now we have a contract.
Yeah. Oh, let's have a look at that one. Is that the same guy? No, it's a different one. Let's have a look at it. Excuse me, Bianca. Ooh. So how does this work? So is it subscription for creators to get involved?
This is entirely free. It's a free and open resource for anyone to use.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you need an account to post and reply, but that's it.
Yeah. So an account is free, or
yeah.
Oh, how do you make your money? That's
mean,
another question. That's another question for another day.
I
right?
mean,
just leave that there. That's fine.
I don't think it's right to charge people for this service, because the people that are using this service are looking for money in the first place, right? Like we deliver and bring enough value in other ways than that we would need to put a paywall in front of.
Cool. All right, very good. I like the idea. I'm absolutely flawed. I am absolutely, no strings. I think I'll use that as well. Yeah, I'm absolutely amazed. I think it's such a great idea. I can't believe no one's thought of it before. And it's so well put together, and just there's a sense of logic to it. I'm looking for this. I can do that. Oh man,
very much is.
How do you not go to bed at night with a big smile on your face, thinking all that you're helping people accomplish within the industry of comics? It's great.
I think I go to bed smiling every night because of comics, because of people. But also, like, we have especially, in the past couple months, we have a very, very, very active community and an active Discord chat. And so I'm having conversations with dozens of creators every single day. And I'm hearing, like, oh man, I'm having this problem with something. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's the thing. I can write some code that will like fix your problem, right? And I think it's super, super important for me to keep my finger on that pulse and to keep having those conversations, no matter what happens with Global Comix, however much we grow and what we do. And like that ultimately is where I take my joy from. Is like I'm part of that community as much as they are, and we hang out and we shoot the shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it's fun.
Best thing to do. Right, there we go. So you want more information about Global Comix? You can head over to the Twitter. It's right there. Okay, lots of good stuff on there. Loads of links. You've looked at the website. You've seen me have a play around with it. You want to have a go at yourself? Dead simple. globalcomics.com will take you there. As Chris said, free to sign up, have a look around, see what you can do, get involved. There's forums in there. There's all sorts of stuff. Just go check it out, right? Best thing
You
to
should.
do.
You should.
Jump in, get your suit wet. Don't be dangling your toe in the water. How are you, man? It's summer.
Both feet first. There's no going back.
Yeah, watch out for what might be called. All right, excellent. Chris, thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really do appreciate it. The site looks great. It's such a breath of fresh air to see so much in one place. You know,
Thank you.
I just don't understand, you know, not to detract from what you've done, because what you've done is fantastic. I just don't understand why nobody thought of it beforehand. You know, it's kind of like, it's one of those moments, isn't it?
I've asked myself that question many times also, and I have no answer.
Cool. In that case, I will leave you with this thought. All right. Donald Duck, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a common question. When he goes in the shower, or when he comes out the bath, he puts a towel around his waist. But then when he gets dressed, he just puts a jumper on, his shirt on. What's that all about?
I mean, there's the logical answer here, and the like just completely silly one.
We'll take both.
The logical answer is, you know, he's dripping wet, and so he needs something to like catch all the water that otherwise would fill his entire bathroom floor.
You thought about that one too much.
The less logical one is probably, you know, like the storytellers are like, well, this needs to be relatable in some way.
Yeah.
And
I just thought about a duck would be worried about getting wet. All right. Okay. That's it. We're done for another episode. Chris, as I said, thank you so much for spending the time. Really do appreciate it. Your site looks great.
Thanks, Johnny. This has been great.
I'm going to be signing on to that.
I've had so much fun on this call. So, you know, anytime you want to chat, hit me up.
Sounds like a plan. All right, guys. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including, you saw it earlier, The Crisis in the Toyverse. And for all you old timers like me, don't forget to check out the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Up and coming episodes will feature a Star Wars special. Seems like everyone's talking about Obi-Wan, so let's go back to when it all began. Chris, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
And for everybody else, I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. As always, adios.
Bye.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.com, all about comic pop culture.